Um, and so, but this is really, really, really exciting for us. I know a lot of us have been looking forward to this. Some of you know that my big, big, big passion is world travel, and Jill and I were actually supposed to go to to Ireland over the summer for 3 days on our way to Israel, and explore her Irish heritage and Irish roots. And that unfortunately did not come to fruition because of the pandemic. But so we were particularly excited when we found out that we were going to get to visit Ireland virtually and do a virtual tour of one of the loveliest cities I've heard in Ireland, the city of Cork. And so this evening we're in Ireland, or middle of the day in Utah, has been organized by our wonderful local Hadassah chapter. So thank you, and to Jill, and to, I know Mimi did some work on this as well, and also Lana Stoddard, and a big part of the brain for this was, of course, Deborah Winkler, whose daughter Marnina lives in Cork and is here, and that's why we that was the connection that made this all happen. But this isn't just like, oh, we get to hang out with Deborah's daughter, which would be a treat in itself, but rather they've also presented um, uh, to synagogues in Brooklyn and elsewhere. So let me give you a little bit of a bio of our speakers today, and then we're going to, after that, watch a video, do some Q&A, and then hear some Irish Jewish music. So looking forward to that. And great to see so many folks here. Like I said, we have 30 users in the chat, and I know that some of you, there are multiple people on there. So great to have a great turnout for these folks. So one of our presenters today is Ruti Lax, and Ruti is a musician, writer, and music teacher living in Crosshaven in County Cork. She has been researching the Cork Jewish community over the last 3 years and has written a musical play set in Cork City in the early 1900s called Green Feather Boa. And Ruti performs klezmer music with her band and one-woman comedy musical theater shows as well. The Cork Jewish Cultural Virtual Walk brings together her research and creative skills in a practical way to share with others. There has been a huge response to this, and so her research and story gathering continues. The walk recently won a National Heritage Week Award in Ireland. And our other speaker today is one of our homegrown, wonderful Utah Jewish people who now lives in Cork. And that is Marnina Winkler, who's joined by her boyfriend, Ger. Nice to see you. And is a PhD student in the Department of German. She has a bachelor's in music with a minor in history from Utah Valley University, and received a master's in ethnomusicology from University College Cork. Marnina's research focuses on the archive collection of the former Lord Mayor of Cork, Gerald Goldberg, whose dates were 1912 to 2003, centering on the concept of life writing, understanding autobiographies, fictionalization of experiences, and cultural memory, specifically relating to the Cork Jewish community. So I know this will be very exciting and great. So how about, without further ado, let's go on our virtual tour of Cork through a video. Give me 1 second here. By the way, if for some reason you can't see or hear, just let me just make sure I did that correctly. Okay, good, I did. Okay.
Welcome to Jewish Cork. The first two Jews who arrived in Cork were Portuguese cooks from the Duke of Schomberg's army in the late 1600s. There was no real Jewish community at that time, until 200 years later. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, millions of Jews left their homes in Europe, the Middle East and North Africa, and in search of new opportunities. Some of them, mostly from Lithuania, found their way to Cork City, landing at Cove. On this walk, we're going to introduce you to some of the history, the poetry, the music, and the stories from members of the community then and now.
This is the Trinity Bridge. It's also known as the Passover Bridge. It was erected in 1977 and opened by the first and only Jewish Lord Mayor of Cork, Gerald Goldberg. He was born in 1912, and he was one of 12 children from Lithuanian parents. He qualified in 1937 as a solicitor and practiced for 63 years. He was not only the Lord Mayor of Cork, but he was also the president of the Hebrew congregation. Gerald Goldberg was known to stand up for those who didn't have a voice, and he was also known to speak up when something was wrong.
When I was very young, I remember being 4, 5, 6 years of age, and it was a very religious community. And at Rosh Hashanah, in the afternoon, after Mincha, the men used to walk out of the synagogue, turn left, and just go straight to the river. Old men in wide hats walked purposefully to the river. They stood in line between chain and key, the words of prayer held in cold hands as water lapped their feet at high tide. They intoned together the ancestral tongue while shaking out the lining of their pockets, ridding themselves of sins gathered and stored since last year. They gestured them away like swatting flies, Pflicht, Pflicht, feeding them to the green flowing God. Herring gulls wheeled and dived and sang above the holy mumblings. They prayed in flight. Their irreverent cause drifted down the darkening October sky. The men returned the linings to their clothes, shook hands, smiled at each other. A cigarette, a light, a cough, a caw of smoke, and it was done. Another year of sin thrown out, already forgotten, eaten by gods, washed by water, as it is written.
The mikveh, the Jewish ritual bath, mainly used by women, was in the back of the Turkish baths on the South Mall, where Jacob's on the Mall restaurant now stands. There was a back entrance over there on Father Matthew Quay so that women could enter the mikveh, called the private Jewish bath, without having to go through the public Turkish bath area.
When Jewish families started to migrate to Cork in the late 1800s, the men of the community would meet in someone's living room for services. When the community became big enough, two congregations developed, Cork Hebrew Congregation and Remnant of Israel. By 1911, there were approximately 450 Jews in all of Cork, and in 1915, the two congregations combined into one, the Hebrew Congregation, and settled here at 10 South Terrace. However, after the 1920s, the Cork Jewish community started to dwindle as people left for places such as Dublin, London, Manchester, and Israel. And by February 2016, the synagogue here on South Terrace opened its doors for the last time. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala.
I'm Phyllis Rosenberg. I was born in Cork, daughter of David Rosenberg and from Dublin and Jessie Rosenberg from Cork. My brother became a dentist in Cork and left there to live in England in 1964. I went to a Protestant school called Christchurch and a Catholic school called Skalvira, and both of them were in the city centre, and I was the only Jewish pupil in my class throughout. And then in 1966, I left Cork to live in Manchester in the UK and I am still living there. The property next door to the synagogue during one period became a bakery. To have the smell of fresh baked bread wafting into the synagogue, particularly on the fast day of Yom Kippur, was added torture.
Here in the area behind the synagogue, Kemp Street, there was an old Jewish graveyard from the period before the Cork Hebrew congregation, probably from the 1700s. We don't know how many people were buried in that cemetery, unfortunately. Later, this area became a bacon curing factory. Later still it was a car park, and now it's being made into a housing estate. The Cork Hebrew congregation purchased land for burial in the 1880s, and that's a few miles outside the city in a beautiful elevated area in Cork. Many well-known and less well-known members of the old community are buried there, as were some Jewish victims of the Lusitania tragedy in 1915. Lahavdil, which means on a completely different subject, on the other side of the housing estate there, on Douglas Street, there's a pub called the Gables, and a klezmer music session took place there every Tuesday evening, back in the day in pre-COVID times, from 2019 until early 2020.
The land that Shalom Park is on used to be owned by the Cork Gas Company. In 1989, they gave it to the Cork City Council, who turned it into the park. The name commemorates the Cork Jewish community, who had originally settled in this part of the city. They arrived as refugees from Lithuania, and this whole area is still known locally as Jewtown. Shalom is Hebrew for peace, and it is also a greeting to say either hello or goodbye. On the Sabbath we say Shabbat Shalom, or in Yiddish, Good Shabbos, wishing our fellow friends a peaceful and good Sabbath. And I can imagine the Jews travelling from Jewtown and heading over to the synagogue, wishing each other a good Shabbos before going to a service.
The Evening Echo installation is a public artwork by New Zealand artist Maddie Leach. Inspired by Cork Jewish history, 9 lamps were erected in 2010. The tallest one is only lit once a year on the last night of Hanukkah at a public event. The intention of this artwork is to maintain a delicate but persistent visibility in the park and to reactivate its connection to Cork's Jewish history. Following the lighting of the lamp, the local and Jewish community are invited back to City Hall for a social event, which includes the lighting of Hanukkot, the Hanukkah candelabras.
Preservation. Cork, 1920. When this is over, I'll go by steam train to the seaside in Yule, Kinsale, or Baltimore, to stroll on the sand or watch the children splash and paddle, or I will lie on a hotel bed listening to the waves. But I won't go to Cove, where the boat brought me from Kovno, and the guard made me change my name to Feldman, and the boy who took my shadel and tossed it into the sea. If I went back again, what else would they take away?
So when the Jews from Europe first settled in Cork in the late 19th century, most of the men became peddlers, salesmen, also known as vehicle-men, because they were selling household necessities and luxuries on their weekly rounds. They'd sometimes be away all week and come back on Friday to spend Shabbos, the Jewish Sabbath, in their homes, and then off again on the Sunday. Each week the purchaser would pay off a bit of the price, sometimes with interest, sometimes not, sometimes they paid, sometimes they didn't pay. These Jews who lived in this area were poor. They'd arrived in Cork with nothing, a lot of them. The tiny houses may have housed a family of 8 children and a lodger. There may have been a few chickens in the backyard. But at the height of community, over 450 Jews lived in Cork, not all here. As the second generation became more educated, became more affluent, they moved to other areas of the city. One of the houses here in Jewtown, known as the Rabbi's House, is where the services were held on Shabbos, on Shabbat, before the synagogue in South Terrace was bought.
Landsmanschaft. This place may not have skyscrapers, the Brooklyn Bridge, or dreams of gold, diamonds, precious stones. So we find pebbles by the river, skim the flat ones as far as they go, and we laugh with our neighbours. Though we don't speak their language, they tip their hats to us like friends. Cousin, I think you'd like it here. At the sad deconsecration ceremony and closure of the Cork Synagogue in 2016, a small and dedicated group formed the Munster Jewish Community to keep Judaism alive in Cork and surrounding counties. Since its formation, more Jews in Ireland are making contact as they hear about the community, and we currently have members from Australia, America, Argentina, Israel, Iraq, Russia, Poland, Germany, France, Spain and England, who have all chosen to live and work in Cork and the surrounding counties. Although we don't yet have our own synagogue building, just like all diaspora communities, we meet where we can and continue to celebrate major and minor festivals, with rabbis from England and America also occasionally visiting and leading services and discussions.
Memories of attending synagogue in Cork in the late 50s and 60s include my mother and I walking as per religious tradition the 2-kilometre journey one particular Jewish New Year in autumn in our new clothes and the inevitable rain. Our lovely Catholic neighbour stopping and offering us a lift to wherever we were going, and my mother having to refuse, and he continuing on, obviously very bewildered and perplexed.
Mary Elms was born May 5th, 1908 in Ballintemple, Cork. In 1928, she attended Trinity College in Dublin. Then, in the 1930s, she received a scholarship to attend the London School of Economics. By 1935, Mary Elms received a certificate in international studies before traveling to assist Spanish Civil War refugees. During the 1940s, she was arrested by the Gestapo on suspicion of espionage, but that did not stop her from smuggling Jewish children and adults out of France in the boot of her car to evade Nazi deportation. Mary Elms was not known to accept medals during her life because it was the right thing to do. Her bravery saved the lives of over 400 children and adults.
This bridge was opened in September 2019 as a pedestrian and cycling bridge honouring Mary Elms. Among those at the opening were members of Mary Elms' family, as well as one of the survivors who was rescued aged 4 or 5 by Mary and other volunteers in France in 1942. Also at the opening of the Mary Elms Bridge were Cork locals, dignitaries and members of the Irish Jewish community. There's so much to tell and so little time. But more information about the Cork Hebrew congregation is on permanent display at Cork Public Museum in Fitzgerald's Park. It's called The Tsars, the Rose Hills and the Music Shop. There are items there from the synagogue and a lot more history than we've shared here. In Cork we have regular klezmer music sessions, and the Munster Jewish community can be contacted through their website. Thanks so much to everyone involved, and also to those not directly involved for their encouragement. Please do get in touch via the webpage. Sei gesund.
Grandma came to Ireland and Lithuania, and my Zeta knew some people who've moved here many years before their rainy landing at the dock at Queenstown Pier, June the 16th, 1904. My mother can't remember her first few years in Cork, a city full of churches, not like Acme and where she was born in her first memory.
All right. Well, I found that fascinating personally. That was really, really cool. Thank you. And so just a couple of like quick questions. Then I want to make sure I have loads of questions, but I don't want to dominate the whole time. But what inspired you all? I mean, we haven't done, but maybe we should, a virtual tour of Jewish Salt Lake City. What inspired you all to make this video. Ruti, I guess I'll ask you. You directed and produced it. What was the inspiration of creating a video about Cork's Jewish history?
Thank you. And hi, everybody. It's really nice to be in Salt Lake City virtually. I had been researching the Cork Jewish community. I had been attending functions of the old Cork Hebrew congregation for a good 10 or 15 years. And I had been researching deeply for about 3 years. Because I had decided that I'm a musician and I wanted to write a musical play, and all these songs and Jewish music was coming out, and I thought I needed to know a little bit more. So I'd been doing the research, and then, as anyone who does any research knows, one thing leads to another, and you see a branch and then you see it's got some extra bits and more twigs and buds on the end, and you keep following and following, and you've got all this information, and what do you do with it? So then I thought, well, it would be great to share it with people. I'm not a historian, I'm not going to write a book, but I could take people on a walk. And I got a bit of funding from Cork City Council to put on a Jewish walk during Heritage Week last year. And so that was all advertised and going to happen. And then COVID came and there was no walks. So we enlisted a friendly filmmaker, Dave Slover, Wombat Media, to edit the film. But Marnina was involved from the beginning as well, because as soon as I kind of thought, oh, we should do this, it was like, yikes, better talk to a historian. So Marnina has been in from the beginning. And the other presenter that you saw, Val Davin, unfortunately at the moment has COVID, but she's getting better. Yeah. I know. So it was really just, what do I do with all this information? People are so interested, it was like every time I turned a corner in Cork or mentioned to somebody that I was doing research, somebody was interested and put me on to somebody else, either from the community or just from the local Cork community. And people are just interested. So it's like you have to share the information then, right?
Thank you. And and I think it's so interesting for us. I mean, we know certainly about the Irish diaspora in America. Our new president, Joe Biden, is Irish Catholic descent, and as was President Kennedy and even President Obama. We focus a lot on his Kenyan heritage, but his mother was Irish heritage. I didn't know. Did anybody from the Irish? Were there Jewish people in the Irish diaspora that came to America? Because we hear, I think, mostly about the Irish Catholics, but I don't know if any Irish Jews came over with that.
Yeah, a lot, really. I mean, some people that came to Cork would have maybe stayed a while and then carried on, or that came to Dublin or Limerick, which are the biggest cities. And then might have carried on to America. And also Phyllis and David Goldberg, who you saw there. David, both from Cork, David moved to Dublin, Phyllis moved to Manchester, others moved to America and Israel. And, when they were late teens or young adults for bigger Jewish communities. So, so some would have just passed through Ireland and gone on to America, and others moved there as young adults. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I know that there's been some prominent Irish Jews, like you all said. Cork had a Jewish mayor, and Dublin's had a couple of Jewish mayors. I was beforehand talking with you all about Yogi Berra, who was not Jewish, but Yogi Berra, the baseball player, was told, hey, did you hear that Dublin elected a Jewish mayor? And his response was, only in America. And also one of the former presidents of Israel, Chaim Herzog, was from Belfast in Northern Ireland. His father was the chief rabbi of Ireland. Marnina, how did you end up in Cork from Salt Lake City? How did you end up in Cork? And did you go there planning to study the Jewish community, or did that just start happening once you got there?
So it was basically an accident when I, I'm not sure
That's
if
how many of
people
us ended up in Utah also, was by
yeah,
accident.
it was basically an accident. As many of you know, my family, and it was right as my father, after he got sick. And, I was looking on Facebook and all of a sudden study ethnomusicology at UCC. And when I sat down with my parents, I didn't even know where it was. I just thought they were really nice to the international students because they had the amount of tuition in euros. Like, I was like, oh, they're just so nice. It's all this small class. I didn't even think about where it was. And then we found out my dad, being my father, was just like, okay, well, where is it? You're so excited. Where is it? And I said, I don't know. And then then I found out later that it was in Ireland. And he was like, well, now you have to apply. So my mom, being the mom that she is, she helped me apply. She actually even hit the submit button because I was too scared to hit my application. She was the one that hit my submit button. So my
I
idea
don't really
was,
imagine your mom, no offense, Deborah, but I don't really imagine your mom being the type of person who would send her daughter halfway around the world, though, knowing your mom.
she was happy to send me, I think, at that point. She was like, go apply. But I mean, I sent my application thinking that I would be looking at the Sean No singing, which is the Irish songs, the Irish music for voice, and comparing it to Torah reading sound. So that's how I was going to start my master's. But then when I came here, the deconsecration, I hate saying this, but I would just happen to be here at the right place at the right time. It was the deconsecration of the Cork synagogue, and the deconsecration service is really not heard of. If you look into it, I have not met anyone who's been like, yeah, I know what that is. So I actually did my master's on the deconsecration service and how in Judaism music brings the past to the present. And so that's how I got into this little Cork Jewish history niche right there. Long story short, that's how I did it.
Thank you.
And we're very glad that you did press submit, Mom.
Our loss is Ireland's gain. I have a million more questions, but I don't want to dominate the whole thing. Did anybody else have questions? If not, I'll keep asking. Going once, going twice. All right, so another question I had, if you don't want to speak up, by the way, you can privately message me or just put it in the chat and I'll ask your question for you. I noticed in the video that when you were like when you all were celebrating Sukkot, and it seems that it's very dominant that women are leading in the. Was that just in the video, or would you say that's the case for the Cork Jewish community, that it's very kind of like that the women are more in leadership roles?
Yeah, amongst the Jewish community, I think the committee are all women, as it happens. Yeah, I suppose it's just happened like that. I don't know what the explanation is for that. That's very interesting, and we'll study that for our next PhD, why that is.
I didn't notice it either until you said it right then. I think I would say it was Rudy. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess, yeah, I've never noticed it until right then.
Oh, there you go. And so about how many people would you say, I mean, the question that I get all the time, that all of us, I think, get all the time, that can be a little frustrating, is how many Jews are in Utah? And we have somebody just kind of made up a number 10 years ago and we go with that, but we don't really know. And I find, especially since I wear a kippah and stuff, whenever I'm in the grocery store, people are coming up to me and they're like, oh, I'm Jewish. And I go, well, how come I don't know you? And then folks are unaffiliated. But how many folks would you say are involved in the Cork Jewish community? You said that the synagogue closed in 2016, but now you've kind of created this almost like Havurah, smaller community. But how many folks do you have involved?
So we know that the Munster Jewish community have over 100 people on the mailing list, which isn't very many, but I suppose that's 100 families, some of which might be a household of one, and some of which might be a family of 6. I know some of the Jewish people personally who aren't affiliated to the Munster Jewish community. And also some of the people on the Munster Jewish community mailing list live in Brooklyn. and have never been to Cork, because we've recently been having some interaction with a community in Brooklyn. You know, I mean, there probably are 100 families, but it's not all in Cork City, it's Cork County. And I think there are some people here from Cork today, are there? There's some people here from
Well,
Cork. I
they're
think
Cork
might be a
Jews.
few. But there are people in Waterford, I think, that are affiliated, and people in Tralee, which is County Kerry. You know, it's all very short distance. To us, it's a long way away because it's a 2-hour drive.
What about in a big city like Dublin? Is there a large Jewish community there, or?
Much bigger. Marnina, do you know numbers?
I know that they did a census record. So they do census records every 10 years, but I know the last one had about 4,000 Jews in Dublin. Dublin is very similar to Utah, where you have a lot of Israelis coming and kind of staying.
Okay.
And kind of they do work and things like that. So it did mention 4,000 people. So a lot of it was the Israelis that have come over, worked, and they do go back. But it is quite a large population. I think they have 2 or 3 synagogues up in Dublin.
Okay, Cyril and Pat are shaking their heads.
Sarah and Pat might have some different information. So Dublin's where the Israelis go, and Cork's where the Americans go. Sarah and Pat, I see your hand is up. Are you from Ireland?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
We're from Dublin, and
so tell us about the Dublin Jewish community.
Well, first of all, if I can speak, my family were Litvaks. They came to Cork in 1907. Their home had been in Acmean, like many of the Jews who came to Ireland. I still actually have the passport that they came on, so I know the route that they took. And I have my uncle's naturalization papers, which were taken out in 1916. They were picture framers by trade, and they lived originally in Hibernian buildings. And then they moved to number 4 Tuckey Street and ran the business from there. My father, when he left school at 12, was peddling the pictures. And of course, this was mainly Catholic Ireland, so he'd knock on doors and they were able to sell their holy pictures. And he was in that business until about 1968. But they came to Dublin, I would think, because there was a larger Jewish community here. And so we have stayed. The community here, I think it's a bit of an exaggeration to say there are 4,000 Jews.
Yeah, I see in the chat, Shimon says maybe more about 1,000 or so.
Yep.
Even that, I think, is wishful thinking.
Yeah.
We're members of the Orthodox Shul here. There's also a progressive shul here. And there are 2 active graveyards. We import our kosher food. At the moment, it's coming in from the UK, but because of Brexit, it'll probably now come in from Europe. So that's about it in a nutshell. A lot of the community here, I would think, is still in decline. Many have left to go to the UK. We have 4 children. They've all been educated in England, and they now all live with their families in London.
Is there a reason that Jews from Ireland are moving to London? By the way, the whole Litvak thing, that's similar with most British Jews.
Sure.
Is there a reason that most are that a lot of
I think largely social. You know, if they want to try and keep within and in the earlier times, certainly when we were growing up here, there were plenty of youth groups and young adult groups that kept the in practical terms, you have the youngsters here, even if they decided then to go away after university, and we have excellent universities here in Ireland. If they decided to go away, at least you had the use of them within the community. They then started to go after the leaving cert, which is the final, when they're 17, 18, they actually were going away. They could get free I think it was free education in other European countries, whereas they were paying, it was fee paying here. So it was very easy for people to go away. And then if they went to Manchester or London or Birmingham or, you know, Leeds, somewhere like that, they got a huge Jewish community, which was quite a novelty for them here. So my question, and I did raise my hand to ask a question.
Oh, please.
And I really, really enjoyed, ladies. Thank you so much. It was very enjoyable to see your very professional tour of Cork. I'm just wondering, with COVID and the way it has happened now that we're all on this kind of Zoom chat, can you see that affect? You say there, Ruti, that you've got people from Brooklyn that have joined in onto your Munster Jewish mailing list. Do you think it'll improve and open up the world to you, or do you think that it will affect you know, the fact of with you in Utah as well? Do you think it will stop people actually turning up for shul if they think they can still go to have the same thing on Zoom? How do you think it will affect us?
Well, there are now services every second Friday night in Cork, but on Zoom, which there hasn't been for quite a long time, you know, over a decade in Cork. So, because even at the end of the synagogue times, I think really it was just once a month, maybe a Shabbat service. So I guess even that we can now have more regular service and maybe makes it more accessible to people. So I think Zoom services will continue. So in that way, you know, it will. But also, like a week ago, I had a get together of 25 people who had Cork Jewish heritage like yourselves, who, you know, met each other again. Some were cousins, some were aliens and they were cousins, but others weren't. And some of them hadn't seen each other for 50 years. And there was one cousin who had never met his other cousin. And
wow.
And this is from this research. So I think what I'm trying to say is, please, can I have your email address so I can talk to you again in the future?
Might get some folks from Utah signing up for the Munster.
Yeah, very good.
I mean, I think there's two different things as well that go on, because one is, Jewish communities and people that want to practice and want to do the services. And I wasn't one of those people. I've now been roped into a few services, but I'm not Orthodox or religious in any way. But culturally, I'm very interested, and I was brought up Orthodox, and I speak Hebrew and stuff. So it's like, you know, and I'm sure you have the same kind of thing. And you have a lot of people who aren't affiliated, but they're very Jewish. So they might not affiliate ever to Munster Jewish community, or they might not ever go to a service because they don't do the religious stuff, but they really feel, you know, you can...
Connected.
Yeah, they really feel connected. So I think Zoom has made that opportunity more available to more people. Yeah.
Well, one other thing is that we do have a rabbi here, and guess what? He's Chabad.
I was going to say Chabad. Chabad's everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
wonderful.
We got our Chabad rabbis again. Everybody's got Chabad rabbis. We say one day that we'll send an astronaut to Mars and he'll land on Mars and hop off the spaceship, and there'll be a sign that says "Welcome to Chabad." So we got Chabad everywhere. But two last questions, and we want to hear some music. So some good comments going on here about Israelis moving to temporarily to Ireland. Somebody asked as well, do you think that Brexit will cause you to return to Ireland from England?
I can't see it.
No.
I don't think there's any. What people are finding is that maybe if they have if they're in England and they have any connection with any, whether it's Irish or any other European country, they're actually looking for some sort of passport or citizenship or something like that to make it easier for them to travel within Europe in case there's a problem after Brexit. And that will only begin. Look, I'm sure these things will sort themselves out. In the short term, there'll be awkward things like us not being able to get maybe kosher food from England. But things will sort out.
Yeah, I would say probably the same thing. They're probably not going to be moving to Ireland, but I do know many people who are English who have claimed their Irish ancestry just to get the European passport. So they might not be moving to Ireland, but they would probably claim it to get their
That
European
Canadian
passport.
passport.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can imagine it, what Cyril and Pat were talking about too, the social component, probably intermarriage is a big, much like here in America, big issue of discussion. If you have 1,000 Jews in the country or whatever, which could cause people to leave. Final question I have, then we want to hear some music. And like I said, I could ask questions all day, is why the heck are you called the Munster Jewish community and not the Cork Jewish community? That would be like us saying, I don't know, welcome to the Gary, Indiana Jewish community of Salt Lake City. That's how I always see it. Tell us what is the name behind this? What is the history behind the name of the Munster community? That intrigued. I got a few people who asked me about that.
Yeah. So Munster is one of the 4 provinces of Ireland.
See, I didn't know that. And is that where you guys are?
Yeah, so I'm stationed in Cork City, which is in Cork. So if you kind of think about it, I was explaining this to somebody the other day. So if you kind of think, at least for me to think about it in an American standpoint, you think about the provinces as kind of like states.
Sure.
And then you have like the counties inside, which are the cities. So they're all incorporated with Ireland, but the provinces, so at least for me being an American, that's kind of how I've kind of sorted how like the different provinces, because you have the different counties, you have, Cork, you have Kerry, you have all these different counties within certain areas, but there's also those like county rivalries like Kerry to Cork. So that's kind of how I've understood it, just so I can get my American, we have so many different states and so many states have different cities. So Munster is kind of that bottom area, the southern part of Ireland.
I see. And there you go. So we have in Munster, Cork, Kerry, Limerick, and Waterford.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Cyril and Pat will know better than me. My geography is rubbish, but yeah, I think maybe includes Tipperary.
All right. Well, I'm going to toss it.
From a geographical or from a very simplistic point of view, you go north, south, east, west. You have Ulster, which is Northern Ireland, Ulster in the north, Leinster in the east, Connacht in the west, and Munster down in the south. And so, like you have in your states in America, you would have in Florida. I know there's Dade County and Broward and all of those. So those are then separate counties within a state, and that's what it would be, rather than maybe what Marnina is saying as cities. It's more the counties. That's cool. How I. Other than that, I won't argue with you.
I'm going to toss it for the very final comment before we do some, or question before we do some music. I see Shimon has his hand very nicely raised. And so Shimon, go ahead. You get the final word and then we're going to listen to some music.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Shimon, some of you will know me originally from Dublin and emigrated to New York in 2001. So in September, I've been here 20 years. So I'm not sure if my Irish accent is still hanging in there, but I'm trying. Anyway, I just wanted to say I enjoyed the Zoom very much and the documentary that you made. I'd just like to add some anecdotes about Cork. So when I was younger, after bar mitzvah, myself and my brother and a couple of friends, we used to go down to Cork. This would have been in the early 90s. We used to go down to Cork for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to help make up the minyan. Freddie Rosehill was the main man, who I'm sure you're all aware of. He's the one who organized that. So that was done for many, many years. My older brother went for a lot longer than me because he's 7 years older than me. So as soon as I turned bar mitzvah, I got involved in that. So, and I have to say, it was a wonderful thing. I'm only sorry that I didn't get a chance to do it for as long as my brother did. But it was a nice experience. You know, there wasn't that many members there at that point, and they needed us to help make up the minyan so they could have the service. And as a young kid, as a teenager, it was a lot of fun. You know, they brought us down. Freddie, put us up in a hotel. It was a great experience, and I actually myself and my wife and my kids and my parents, we went down to Cork a few years ago. It was probably maybe a year or two before Freddie passed away, and I got in touch with him, and we met him at the shul, and he gave us a tour and everything, and we were reminiscing about those old days. So he was a great character. I don't know how many of you got to know him, but he was a fantastic man.
Thank you for those.
Thanks, Shimon.
Thank you. It's so lovely to have so many folks from Ireland who are really, like I said, knew nothing about Jewish Ireland for this. So I would love, I know many of us would as well, to hear some music. And Ruti was beforehand telling me about how the accordion is very common in Irish music, and and so we're going to hear a bit of Irish klezmer, I'd like to call it, I guess. And what I'm going
Something like that.
what I'm going to do
Like that.
is
Can I just say?
Yeah, please.
No, I'm actually just putting my email address and my website into the chat, but definitely, I mean, anyone who would have any Cork stories or just to have some more communication after this, because the research continues, and obviously the video is very incomplete. Obviously you mentioned Freddie, and there was nobody mentioned in the video, as you might have noticed, apart from Gerald. It would be great to, to talk to you. Myself and Monina both knew Freddie. But the email is there in the chat now anyway, just to say that if anyone has to be in touch, because we're having another Cork Jewish get together with the old community in, I think we said 6 weeks from now, because we had 23 together last Sunday and everyone wants to do it again. And I'm sure people would absolutely love to see you, Shimon, because some of them would have known you. Sure, maybe. And Cyril and Pat, they would do, or your father. Shall I just play a tune?
Sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, because we have the lyrics, so that we have the lyrics up on the screen. But what you might want to do is when I share the screen, you can click and choose side by side as an option for your viewing. And that way you can both see Ruti and also the lyrics. So I will put that on. And here we go. Which one are we? And there's also here. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. You've already heard the tune of Welcome to Ireland, so we could do that. I've kind of, it's a bit further down the page.
Yeah, sure. I was just going to mention here that I was sent a book list as well about history of Jews in Ireland. If anybody would like that, you can email me at rabbi@kolami.org and I'll send that your way. So yeah, Ruti, you tell me what you'd like to start with. We did hear Grandma.
Okay, so you can sing along if you like.
Go for it.
I actually changed the order slightly because I've been messing about with this.
Are we starting with Grandma Came to Ireland?
Yeah, we'll start with that. You can all sing along, but please be muted, because otherwise it'll sound really weird.
Yeah, so if everybody can mute except for Ruti, and this is a song that Ruti actually, I believe, wrote. So
yeah,
so
this is part of the musical that will hopefully hit the stage in 22 or 23. Funding make available, and once we can do things. And I just have to apologise. I'm stuck in London and it's my usual accordion, so it's not quite, it's a little bit old and rough sounding. Grandma came to Ireland from Lithuania. My Zayda knew some people who'd moved here many years before that rainy Thursday, when they landed at long last at Queenstown Pier in 1904. My memory, the first few years in
Cork, a city full of church, not like Acmean, where she was born, and her first memory of my grandma singing songs to her in Yiddish, songs about the pogroms and the wars. My mother, her parents spoke between themselves only in Yiddish. They read the local paper trying to learn English. When mother went to school, she learned some words in Irish. And in the synagogue, the prayers were all in Hebrew. And so it came to pass that by the age of 14 and a half, there were 4 languages she knew. Fridays were special, and in the winter she would have to leave school early and hurry home to help house for Shabbos, because her parents and their neighbors were religious, just like they'd been in Acme. And my mother grew up Irish. It didn't matter to her friends that she was Jewish. It made no difference except Saturday mornings. She went to synagogue and went to Cheder Sunday, when her friends all went to mass.
Okay.
A bit of a mishmash.
I love that. One of the things that stood out to me was that it said, I love that verse. It said that her it didn't matter to her friends that she was Jewish. Do you find that Ireland is pretty religiously tolerant of Jewish people? Is there not much anti-Semitism there?
Well,
That's
in
right,
Cork
yeah, it has been.
specifically, there's not a
You know.
lot. Yeah, there's not a lot of anti-Semitism. There was that boycott up in Limerick for about 2 years in the early 1900s, that there was about almost 200 Jews, maybe a little bit more, 250 Jews in Limerick. And then the boycott happened, I want to say in 1904. And then after the boycott happened, about 30% to 50% within the first year of the Jews moved to Cork by the 1905. And then there was only a couple people left, and then by that time they had left and moved because this boycott got so bad. But other than that, I mean, the Cork Jewish history on anti-Semitism is very small. There's actually something that I found really interesting. I'm really excited about this one historical fact, and then Rudy can get back to singing. In the late 1800s, there was a ship that came forward that said that they were German Jews, and they were there to sell furniture. And then, of course, the non-Jewish community who did make furniture, they're like, well, these Jews are coming into our area, and they complained. And the non-Jewish area was like, no, this isn't the Jewish community. The Jewish community had nothing to do with this. This is just a boat that's here for no reason. And there was I want to say I don't want to say a boycott, but there was like a fight that started out. Somebody tried to light something on fire, and then the non-Jews in the area actually brought the ringleader of this event forward, and they were actually imprisoned. So the first 3 people that started this off were imprisoned, which I find very interesting when you're talking about anti-Semitism and in the late 1800s, to find that these ringleaders were brought to justice. That I think is really a bridge between the non-Jewish and the Jewish community in Cork City.
Thank you. And I loved hearing the video about that lady that they dubbed the Irish Schindler. Ruti, what song should we sing next?
Well, I thought maybe something in Yiddish. I don't know. Does anybody
Sure.
have Yiddish in their background? But it might be nice. Would you like to hear a song in Yiddish?
That would be
Yes.
lovely. Is this one right here, Arum Dim Fire?
Around them fire, yeah. So you have the words there. I don't know where it originated in the Haim, but it would have been a youth group song. Pre-war anyway, obviously. Around them fire, we're singing Lieder. Die Nacht ist teuer, man wird nicht müde. Und soll durch Feier verloschen werden, scheint auf der Himmel in seine Sterne. Tag räumt die Kerb mit Blumenkränzen, warum dem Feier wir freilich tanzen, weil tanzen Lied ist unser Leben, denn noch in Schlaf Geläume schweben. Around the fire, we're singing songs. The night is young and no one's tired. And from the fire, the sparks are rising. And in heavens, your stars are shining. You crown your head with rings of flowers. Around the fire, we're dancing freilichs, while dancing song ooby-doop is our life. At night in sleep, our dreams are woven. At night in sleep, Chalaim is
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another one you would like? Which one should we do
So-
next?
I wrote a melody for this, the Chief Seattle letter.
Sure. My
I was at an
city's-
event earlier today.
I'm a Seattleite, but I'm a native Seattleite. So this is my city's namesake. So sure, I'm a big fan.
Oh, so I wrote the melody for this for I was at a Tu B'Shvat event earlier today on Zoom. So I put a melody to teachings about the earth. It was from a Tu B'Shvat Seder, which I hadn't come across the Tu B'Shvat Seder before, but this was one of the writings in that Seder. Teach your children what we've taught our children, that the earth is our mother. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. If men spit on the ground, they spit upon themselves. This we know, this we know. This we know, this we know. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth, does not belong to us. We belong to the earth, does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. Teach your children what we've taught our children, that the earth is our mother.
Whatever befalls the earth, befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. We did not weave the web of life. We're merely a small part of it. This we know, this we know. This we know, this we know. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth, does not belong to us. We belong to the earth, it does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. Yabba-da, 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 And just to say, I didn't make up the last bit, the Nigun, which is a Yiddish klezmer song without words. I know that from my childhood growing up in Liverpool, a Nigun.
Love it. Well, let's see. I know we got a couple more songs. Should we, how are you doing on time?
Good. How are you doing on time?
I'm having a great time. I could do this all day. This is fun. So how about we conclude with two more songs? Maybe if you don't mind, which one should we conclude on?
What have we got there? Alabreed.
Yeah. Which one do you want to do next? Alabreed or All Brothers and Sisters?
It's the same thing.
Oh, it's the same song.
Is the translation. So Alabreed is a song. Yeah, I guess we could just finish with Alabrida. It's got a lovely bit you can all join in. Very famous Yiddish words.
Sounds good. So
Und wir seien alle Brüder, alle Brüder und wir heilige Lieder, und wir seien alle Schwestern, so wir I hope you're all joining in on Zoom. Und wir halten sich doch alle, wie Chossen mit der Kalle, und wir seien freilich munter, freilich munter, singen Lieder, tanzen unter, Und wir halten sich doch einem, sich doch einem, selches ist die Tobak einem, und wir seien alle einig, zu mir seinen viel zu wenig,
Bravo. That was excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Let's see.
And you notice that the words are actually is the words, but I prefer a more positive. Ay, ay, ay. Gotta be up.
Love it. Well, thank you. I see
No,
Shimon's
don't want to.
comments here, and so Shimon, you can just send me an email, and I will put my email right there, and I'll get you a recording of today's happy to send one to you too, Ruti and Marnina. Thank you so very much. Didn't know if you guys had any final comments or anything, but I want to thank you so much for such a lovely, lovely, lovely time and transporting me away from my COVID quarantine sanctuary in Utah to vicariously getting to explore Cork, Ireland. It's been a tremendous privilege and joy.
Well, thank you very much for having us, and it's lovely to meet Marnina's family. And also, I'd just like to say, please get in touch, and you know, it's really nice to be in touch with people, and you know, obviously, especially the people with some Cork Irish history, Irish Jewish history. It'd be lovely to hear from you.
I also wanted to mention, if you want more information, I was recently interviewed by RTE Nationwide, which is a pretty big deal here. And if you want more information, they did it for Holocaust Remembrance. So they do talk a lot about all the fun places in Cork, and they have some really nice, beautiful stories. It's only 30 minutes long, so I'll put that in the chat if anybody wants to watch it later. It is absolutely gorgeous. I strongly suggest it. And I also have a nice book list that's kind of paired with that song sheet that we've put together. So if you do want something to read that is interesting, that might give you more information about the Cork Jewish history, the book list will be hopefully available. It'll be nice to just have some options for now with COVID. You'll have something to read.
Lovely. Well, thank you. And yes, we do have that book list. So people can email me for that as well. But thank you so much. Something that I've said that's important to me at Kol Ami, it got a little delayed because of COVID, but we do plan to still do this, is for us to travel the world so that we can see more of the Jewish world, and the Jewish world can get to know us. So getting to do that today virtually was a joy, and I want to thank again not only Ruti and Marnina and all of our other friends from Ireland who joined us, but also give a big thank you to Hadassah for organizing this. This has been a great way to spend our day. So thank you, everybody, and you all have a nice night over in Ireland, and the rest of you all have a great day, and Shavua Tov. Thanks, everybody, and you can check out that link Marnina just put in the chat as well. All right, everybody. Take care. Thank you.